the daughter of the Jin family. I also pampered her madly until one day, without warning, her engagement invitation. Only then did I realize how. That night, I threw away the ring she gave me in despair and left the room full of beautiful memories. 4 years later, we met again. My driver hit her silver, gray Lamborghini. I voluntarily lowered. A soft, captivating female voice drifted. Who is this? Who dares to challenge? I clutched the door handle tightly. Before I could turn my head away, she leaned against the car. Her pure and flawless face appeared right in front of me. At that moment, my mind buzzed, and I felt my heart race. Through 4 years of separation, memories surged like I could clearly feel my heartbeat pounding. Her face came closer. The sight brought a flood of memory. She gazed at me intently for a while. In the next moment, her eyes turned slightly. She carefully said, "Jiangche, you're back." It took me several seconds to respond. My trembling fingers pressed. I grabbed my backpack, opened the cart, and hurriedly got out. Before I could take she stretched out her arms to block my way. The two of us stood there, motionless. Neither of us spoke. I lowered my head, feeling the heat of her gaze. Her eyes were like a dense net enveloping me. The next second, I slowly and asked calmly, "Do I know you?" Then I sidestepped, and without looking back, headed toward behind me. I heard her faint, sarcastic laugh. "Beds were broken, and now you claim you don't. Jiangche, you're quite amused." My steps faltered. My ears felt a bit hot. I quickened my pace and entered the hotel, heading straight to the third-floor banquet. I was here to attend the wedding of my former high school teacher. I had confirmed with him that Gu Qinghan wasn't on today's yet earlier. How did he show up at the entrance? The banquet hall was packed. In my daze, I found an empty seat and sat, trying to calm my mind. Suddenly, someone asked, "Hey, handsome, who are you?" It was only then I noticed the people around. Unfortunately, they were all four. The one asking sat diagonally. If I wasn't mistaken, her name was Sue. We'd been deskmates for one semester. In high school, I wore black-rimmed and shabby, ugly sportswear. I lived humbly and on. Back then, Su Wanrong often complained, why did she have to share a desk with a poor, ugly nerd like me? "Handsome, are you also Mr. Wang's?" Su Wanrong laughed shamelessly. My overly striking eyes revealed impatience. "I'm your poor, ugly deskmate, Jiang Chet. How can you not recognize?" The table of over 10 people fell silent, and their astonished gazes turned to me, and it took them a moment to connect this hand with the old image of the awkward nerd. Wow, is this what they call a complete make? You must have suffered a lot to achieve this. I glanced at the boy beside Su Wanrong. It was Wang Yang. In high school, he often targeted me. The atmosphere at the table, everyone thought I'd endure it. Like Wang Yang was smug, convinced he could easily, but instead, the corners of my lips curled into a cold. "The meal hasn't even started yet, and your mouth is already running." Saying this, I pulled out a small packet and sincerely handed it. "Why is your mouth running already?" Saying this, I pulled out a small. Sincerely and considerately, I hand. "Clean your mouth." I calmly watched Wang Yang's twitching and his face darkening. Suddenly, I heard a light chuckle. I turned my head. There was Gu Qingnan, leaning one arm on my chair. Her pleasant voice carried a casual indifference. "Who's the handsome guy? I don't think I know him. Mind if I sit next to you?" Gu Qinghan's thin lips curved into a plate. I wanted to say I mind, but someone quickly pulled a chair for her. "Hurry up, make room for Gu. Move over a bit." Gu Qinghan sat down and scooted her chair closer and then closer. I took a shallow breath, trying to ignore her presence. But out of the corner of my eye, I saw her lazily leaning back on her cold, slender fingers rested on her leg. A fresh, pleasant, faintly lingering, subtly invading my thoughts. I tried to move my chair to distance, but it wouldn't budge. Lowering my head, I realized her high heel was onto one leg of my chair. I straightened my back and frowned at her, but she remained unbothered, slowly sipping her tea. This tea is too mediocre. The next second, her hand holding the teacup trembled because I had raised and mercilessly pressed down on her shoe. Gu Qinghan instinctively pulled her foot. She quickly moved her chair away. Opposite me, Wang Yang was still reeling from Gu Qinghan calling me, his jealousy reaching its peak. After all, Gu Qinghan was the high school, even several neighboring school heartthrobs. Now she was taking the initiative to engage with the once awkward Wang Yang, trying to humiliate me. "Gu Qinghan, can you even recognize? This is none other than Jiang Che. Don't drag me into your—" Wang Yang was instantly speechless. Gu Qinghan nonchalantly tugged at her. "You haven't changed much." Wang Yang's face turned red, his smug expression frozen. "Gu Qinghan, are you saying I still look like an innocent school?" Gu Qinghan looked slightly. "I meant your inner beauty is still lacking." Wang Yang froze for a few, then forced an awkward laugh to save face. "Gu Qinghan, you sure know how to joke. Then why aren't you laughing? Is it because you're naturally—" Gu Qinghan's carefree tone made everyone burst into laughter. Even the corners of my mouth began to lift, but I quickly suppressed it. Wang Yang, now thoroughly embarrassed, quietly returned to his seat. The wedding ceremony began. The lights dimmed in the hall. On the stage, lined with pink roses and lilies, the host, as they slowly walked onto the stage. I turned my head curiously to Gu Qinghan also glanced at the stage, but only for a moment, before looking back at me. At that moment, I was poised, a gentleness emanating from within. Under the dim lighting, her gaze was mischievous. Reclining lazily against her chair, with her beautiful deep-set eyes, scrutinized me inch by inch. Her gaze stirred memories of her countless. Flustered, I turned completely away from her. I couldn't look back. She, this shameless pirate, amidst silver and red balloons and rose petals falling from above, perfectly captured the wedding scene. I couldn't help but recall a time when I wanted to. Gu Qinghan panicked. She threw herself into my arm, whispering over and over in my ear. Her tear-filled eyes clung to me. He seriously said he wanted to have them, and I really believed. Later, I realized how easy it was. I glanced sideways. The seat was empty. He left. I closed my eyes, suppressing the fermenting emotion. Whatever, I didn't care anymore anyway. After the ceremony ended, looking at the full, I had no appetite. The next second, my phone rang. I've arrived at. How's it over there? It was my good friend Kjen. I couldn't help but curl my lip. After a moment of silence, I said, I ran into him. That scumbag Gu Qinghan, right? Wait, I'm bringing my 50-meter broadsword to deal with him. I couldn't help but laugh. Forget it. His skin is thick enough to be you wouldn't make a dip. But what I didn't expect was that certain bull had already appeared at the corridor corner. Gu Qinghan was quietly looking at me. Lowering her voice, I have something more. We'll talk another day. The assistant on the other end of the call. Today was supposed to be the discussion for just 5 minutes before the company president suddenly said, I'm going to take a look. What if he shows up? Then hurried, ending the call. Gu Qinghan steadily walked toward me. I turned and took a step, unexpectedly bumping straight in an instant, the cold fragrance and warmth. Before I could react, I heard a pleasant laugh. I thought the handsome guy unlocked his looks and didn't recognize me, his old flame. Didn't expect him to be so proactive. I rolled my eyes and tried to leave, but she grabbed me from behind. Gu Qinghan's thin red lips. The weather's dry. Be careful of fires. At that moment, be careful of fires. At that moment, my heartbeat accelerated. I looked down and met his gray gaze. I froze for a moment. I pushed Gu Qinghan away forcefully. Are you Yes. Lovesick. The woman's voice suddenly soft, filled with a mix of emotions. I love. If you don't come back, I might never recover. The playful smile on his lips made it hard if he was sincere or just joking. But in my eyes, it was just another one of his little tricks to tease me. With a cold voice, I said, I told you, I don't know you. Then turned to leave immediately. But the next second, Gu Qinghan suddenly moved close. Don't know me? Are you saying you remember? Except me. I froze for a few seconds, snorted coldly, but he grabbed me from behind. The enchanting tone of the woman's voice kept. Besides, you didn't just meet me. You used me, didn't you? My cheeks flushed instantly. My heart skipped a beat. Just as I was about. Gu Qinghan suddenly stepped back, turning to greet someone behind me. Mr. Wang. I thought he was messing with me again. But when I turned around, I really saw Wang Can coming out of the lounge. Wang Can's first group of students was our class, so he was particularly close. He was wearing a casual trench and approached us with a gossiping look. You too? Gu Qinghan smirked nonchalantly. Teacher, if you say there is. The next second, Wang Can slapped my shoulder. Xiaoche, back when you were students, I could already. This girl always stared at stole glances at you at least 800 times. Hearing this, and gave Gu Qinghan a. Gu Qinghan cleared her throat awkwardly and spoke with a mischievous tone. You're exaggerating. You're exaggerating. I never did that. You must have. Wang Can chuckled, standing on the I could see all your little moves clearly. Teacher, you misunderstood. Gu Qinghan and I aren't in that kind, and we don't even look like a. Wang Can paused. Apologetically, he said, I just saw you two so close, and Gu Qinghan quickly changed the subject. Teacher, you look so handsome today, and the bride is gorgeous. Wang Can laughed warmly. After complimenting him, he hurried back to the banquet hall. I seized the chance to leave, but suddenly I heard Gu Qinghan's displeased voice behind. Xiaoche, stop saying we don't match. Don't say that ever again. When Gu Qinghan confessed to me back then, my first reaction was that he was teasing me. I was terrified. It wasn't until he repeatedly emphasized his that I nervously and doubtfully replied, how could I be good enough for you? We don't match. Back then, seeing me like this, Gu Qinghan was heartbroken, and I suddenly stopped walking. A bittersweet feeling welled up from my heart. But when I turned around, my expression was calm. Are you misunderstanding? Gu Qinghan crossed his arm. Pouting, he gave me a puzzled look. When I said we don't match, I meant a wild chicken like you. How could you match a phoenix like me? Then he scanned me disdainfully. Gu Qinghan froze for a few seconds, pointing at himself incredulously. A wild chicken? Clearly, pigs can't appreciate. I shot him another disdainful look. Gu Qinghan laughed angrily on the spot. Fine. In just 1 sec, I became a pig again. Even reincarnation doesn't happen. I snorted coldly and turned to leave, only to be stopped in my tracks by her long leg. Even a phoenix. Shouldn't dirty someone's chicken claw. You're just walking away, the corner of my mouth, my face full of, but looking at the footprints on his shoes, it did seem. I reluctantly pulled out a small pack of tissue. Gu Qinghan squinted slightly. This can clean. You should take responsibility. How about we book a presidential suite and clean it slowly? Hearing this, I immediately withdrew my hand, but the woman's hand suddenly reached. As she took the tissues, her slender fingers intertwined tightly with mine. Her palms were warm compared to my fingertip. The atmosphere, my ears started. The woman's beautiful, captive smiled teasingly. Her steps. This meal, I've had it, and I'll have it even more in the future. I've set my sights on you. In the next moment, Gu Qinghan let go and turned to leave first. Watching his retreating figure, I rubbed my foot, the heart that had been quiet for so long. Originally, I planned to leave but I didn't expect Wang Can to still. He arranged a karaoke room for us. The room was spacious, about 20 old classmates. After I walked in, I glanced at Gu Qinghan, who was in the center, and purposely sat in the. Suddenly, she pretended to be elegant, flicking her skirt, rubbing her hands and touching, doing it 800 times. Then she turned as if noticing me, smiling with exaggerated expressions. Her gaze filled with as if looking at a mother in a zoo, as if watching a mother in a zoo. The next second, Suwanru cleared. She looked at my strikingly handsome. Still, she shamelessly sat beside. Old classmate, add me on Green Bubble. I reluctantly replied, I don't have Green Bubble. Suwanru was stunned. Who doesn't have Green Bubble these days? Just create one. Unable to bear it anymore, I bluntly said, do you really need me to say it? Angry Suwanru sarcastically sneered. Humph, you used to be just a poor country bump. Now you think you're something special. Hearing this, I smirked coldly. But you're definitely ordinary and Suwanru's face twitched. Her expression became somewhat just as she was about to burst in. A commanding voice came from behind, full of authority. Move aside. Gu Qinghan strode forward with a grim. He tilted his chin toward Suwanru. Get lost. Suwanru's face looked visibly embarrassed, but she didn't dare say. Hurriedly, she got up. Gu Xiaoa. Have a seat. Gu Qinghan bent down slightly, propped up one long leg, and leisurely leaned. I frowned, thinking of changing seats, but decided against. Otherwise, it would seem like the private room was live. Someone had already picked up the microphone. I turned sideways facing Gu Qinghan and buried my head. I listened to the messages absent-mindedly. Suddenly, I felt a poke at my lower back. Instinctively, Gu Qinghan's finger was still pressing. He unceremoniously poked me again. Pay attention to the sing. Can you show some respect for the mic and the sound system here? What nonsense is she up to now? I felt like covering my ears immediately, but the lyrics drilled into my head. For a moment, I froze in place. In the dim corner, the woman's gaze grew increasing until he lazily smirked. With a casual and teasing why are all these songs speak? I quickly masked my emotions, abruptly compelled to ignore him. The private room was bustling. Inevitably, there was the waiter brought in entering the room. Someone eagerly asked, Miss Gu, why do you want a drink? Gu Qinghan shyly waved her hand. I don't drink. The next second, I took a can of beer, taking small sips. Oh, you've learned to drink now. A mocking voice came from the side. Cold and I kept a straight face and sped up to finish the. Immediately, I asked for another. Gu Qinghan sighed helplessly and stayed silent. Suddenly, a boy slightly tipped, grabbed the microphone and passionately. This next song is dedicated to my I wish her infertility and a house. Everything was sweet lies. Love's deceiver, where is your conscience? The song was oddly fitting. Hearing this, I put down my turn to look at someone. My gaze seemed to curse harshly. Gu Qinghan froze for a few seconds. My gaze became even sharper. What do you All right. Now I'm the love deceiver, and you sure know how to slander. Slander or not, he clearly knew the truth. I coldly snorted and turned my. The boy kept singing until he stopped. Former class monitor Li Xia beside him sat on the sofa. Wang Yang picked up the microphone, looking in my direction. Seeing this, I couldn't help calmly meeting his gaze. Does he have nothing better to do than start? The sound from the golden microphone drawing everyone's attention. Wang Yang walked up to me. I want to apologize to Jiang Che. Brother Che, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said you. I remember your parents passed. You're an orphan. Oh wait, you still have a grandma who sweeps the. Plastic surgery costs a lot. You certainly can't afford it. I misunderstood you. In an instant, the whole room fell silent. Everyone had different. Some were already feeling secondhand embarrassed. Wang Yang's eyes were full of malice and staring provocatively in my direction. The next second, I stood up slowly, sneering as I asked Wang Yang, your parents are still rich and successful, right? Yes, so I didn't show a hint of panic or sadness on my disappointing Wang Yang. Great. Yes, so what? Wang Yang couldn't read my emotions at all, starting to feel flustered and annoyed. Poor you. You must be jealous. A faint chill appeared in my eyes, along with a mock. Then I'm confused. If your parents are so rich and successful, couldn't they have, in those 2 minutes, then creating a failure? My words turned Wang Yang's face from red to pale. He wanted to say something, but couldn't muster a single word in response. Clearly, I was no longer the same person as in the past. Faced with such, I would silently swallow in a corner, being a timid pushover. But now not even someone like Wang Yang, let alone anyone else, could push. Even if a king showed up, they couldn't make me bend. Respect or scorn, I save grievances for others and keep satisfaction. Facing Wang Yang's furious, I remained calm as ever with my, has no one told you to keep your mouth shut? Right now, you look like a clogged in the corner. You look like a clogged toilet in the corner of a, talking to you is really irritating. And then I acted quite convinced. It even made a few people instinctively. They moved a little further. Gu Qinghan curled his lips and glanced at Wang Yang. His face, infuriated by my performance, hadn't been this pale in 3. There were faint chuckles around. Wang Yang, unable to control him, he grew furious. Suddenly, he shot a subtle glance at Suwanru, cleared her throat and said, "Don't go too far." Wang Yang was just trying to apologize. Before she could finish, she suddenly felt an extremely sharp gaze. Gu Qinghan, still in his lazy and aristocratic, leaned on the sofa with an indifferent expression. But his eyes, they carried a cold and terrifying warning. In an instant, Suwanru lost all courage to continue. She timidly shrank her neck. At the same time, she suddenly recalled it was during the first semester, the first time she was very upset about it. In front of many people, she tried that day as she passed a volleyball thrown by Gu Qing hit her squarely in the face. It almost knocked out one of her front. A foul mouth deserves. Don't bully your deskmate again. At that, Gu Qinghan left this baffling comment and walked away. Wang Yang saw Suwanru stop talking. In front of so many old classmates, not only did he fail to but he also lost face himself. He was mentally collapsed. His face turned. He yelled at me, "Who do you think you are? Your family is something a pauper can never reach in your lifetime." But in the next moment, a female voice rang out, full of mockery and ridicule. Oh, how come I didn't know? When did our class get a young master? Am I not standing high enough? How come I haven't even seen a single hair from young master? Everyone looked puzzled. They watched as Gu Qinghan's figure stood up from the corner. Her aura radiated. She was stunning. She crossed her arms and stepped, her whole body shielding me. She glanced down. Wang Yang's enchanting fox-like eyes revealed arrogance and defiance. Young Master Wang, care to explain? At this moment, Wang Yang was terrified. His lips trembled uncontrollably. His voice was softer than because Miss Gu is standing so high. He dared not stay silent, nor could he afford to lie. The Wang family is merely nouveau riche, while the Gu family has profound involving medicine, jewelry, mining, and other industries. As the daughter of an elite aristocratic family, Gu Qinghan was born into unparalleled. Her life started at the top. Compared to her, Wang Yang's family, who made their fortune, seemed utterly insignificant. How could they ever hope to? Wang Yang couldn't figure what he had done to provoke Gu Qinghan. Why was she targeting him over and over? It couldn't possibly be over, but offending Gu Qinghan was the worst mistake. Otherwise, death might come. He trembled as he bowed his head to apologize. "It's all my fault. I'm sorry." Looking at his cautious, fearful, and utterly humble, most people's faces were marked with 2 words. Coming to an old classmate's reunion just to act. Now you've hit a brick wall. Purely karma. In the end, it was Li Xiao who stepped in. "Teacher Wang might show up later. Let's keep singing and chatting. Sister Gu, how about you?" Gu Qinghan sat back in the corner. Her eyes carried a playful smile as she glanced. I also returned to this, turning my back to her. Without the next moment, her playful and carefree tone rang out. "Then pick a song for me. Honey, praise me." Instantly, my ears felt a bit warm, and my back stiffened. I quickly lowered my head, pretending as if I didn't hear anything. The others were momentarily, then burst into laughter. Honestly, the song title didn't match Gu Qinghan's. The straightforward Li Xiao even searched, but there was no such song. Gu Qinghan raised her eyebrows and smiled. "When I marry my husband someday, I'll debut as a singer and release that." Pfft. Everyone burst out laughing. The atmosphere in the room became lively. I maintained my rigid posture, staring at my phone for a long. But then her rare and smooth voice came lazy. "Keep looking at your phone. You're going to." Hearing this, I still didn't, pretending to be focused on the phone. But no matter how much I tapped, the next second, a gentle yet mischievous voice rang out again. "Che, my dear, your phone is upside down." That's when I realized I was tapping the phone case, not the screen. My eye twitched involuntarily, and my toes dug into the ground in embarrassment. Kazhen suddenly called. I grabbed my phone and ran out of. As they watched me leave, Gu Qinghan casually grabbed the beer and took a sip. The next moment, Li Xiao sat beside her and whispered, "You're in a great mood today." Over the past few years, Gu Qinghan never missed a single high school reunion. Li Xiao was curious. Logically speaking, someone, a top-tier heiress of the elite, and now a rising leader in the inner circle, would be too busy to attend. She really didn't need to her precious time at these gaps. But every time she showed up, she always sat alone, cold-faced, drinking silently. Today, she was clearly in a much better. Li Xiao saw a chance to chat and get closer. After all, someone of Gu Qinghan's status was nearly impossible outside this room. Gu Qing leisurely finished the half can of beer I left. Li Xiao quickly handed her another can. "Still drinking? There's more here." Gu Qinghan's lips curved slightly. "No, I have something to take." Meanwhile, I answered the call in the restroom at the end of the hall. Kazhen's concerned voice came through. "Are you okay?" Just had a bit to drink, I replied, my voice unusually. Hearing this, my good buddy Kajen instantly knew I was upset. He gritted his teeth and said, "Wait there, I'm coming to get you right." Forget it. You'd have to take a cab from the hotel. It's a bit far. Before I could finish, Kijen cut me off. A good brother drinking alone at night? How can I leave you like that? And he hung up. I stood by the sink, staring blankly at the darkened phones until a soft voice from above called out, "Kun Kun." That's my childhood nick. She still remembered. There was a tenderness, a pampered illusion, as if we were back in our... For a moment, my heart sank slightly. Before I could turn around, she leaned on the sink, stepping closer, and hugged me tightly. I tilted my head slightly, locking eyes with those mesmerizing fox-like eyes were deep and profound. At this moment, they gazed. Even after 4 years, I couldn't help but feel a fleeting sense. I reminded myself, being deceived once was planned, so I steadied myself, turning my indifferent gaze away. Gu Qinghan didn't move an inch. You're pretending not to recognize? Gu Qinghan looked down at me for a few, her enchanting fox-like eyes brimming. She suddenly leaned in close, her soft lips near my ear, whispering, "That night, so thrilling, and you forgot." For a moment, my breath hitched. In the mirror, her eyes entangled. "Forgotten? It's fine. Since you insist on not recognizing, I'll help you remember. After all, I'm just that she said, tilting my chin, forcing her lips close to mine. Just as she was about to kiss me, I quickly stepped back. "Gu Qinghan," I hissed. Finally, Gu Qinghan let go. Her expression, a mix of, "So." She squinted slightly. "Couldn't you let me kiss you before saying it?" Her embrace lingered, leaving her sweet and alluring scent on me. Unique and seductive. It was hard to think straight. With a stern face, I said, "Let me go. Don't let me go so easily." I feigned disgust and added, "I hate the smell of your perfume." The next second, Gu Qinghan released me, took a step back, and she sniffed her own clothes with her face puzzled. She mumbled softly, "Who did I learn to wear perfume?" I couldn't make out her muttering. My expression returned to normal. "Gu Qinghan, we broke up. Gu Qinghan, we broke up. From now on, please keep your..." Gu Qinghan stared at me intently and said, "Who agreed? You didn't even ask." I decided on my own that we were over. With a mocking smirk, he said, "4 years ago, did you ask me when you got engaged to Ito Cheng? So back then, you really left because of that?" Gu Qinghan's face showed an unusual hint of nervous. "Jiang Che, listen to my A lot happened that year. The engagement wasn't voluntary. I never really intended to marry Ito Cheng. I've been looking for you these 4 years." My face remained calm as ever, with indifference and apathy in my hurting him like sharp thorns. Gu Qinghan's expression froze for a few. "What kind of reaction?" "No reaction. It's all in the past. I've already let it go. I don't care anymore." Before finishing, I turned and walked. I walked quickly, as if this could throw the tumult in my heart out of my mind. While passing a lounge at the corridor's corner, I suddenly heard an unpleasant voice. "Jiang Che, that bastard embarrassed me so bad. I definitely won't let him off." I sneered coldly, slowly leaning close to the slightly ajar. The gap was too small, and the lounge was dimly lit. I vaguely saw 2 figures embracing each other. It was Wang Yang and Su Wanrong. I found it amusing, but then I heard a soft voice behind. Turning around, I saw Gu Qinghan's handsome and elegant face. "Women can say anything, but I meant everything I said to you before." I gave him a cold look, letting him interpret it on his own. Then I silently switched my phone to recording mode, slipped it into, but the light was too dim, and the movements needed to be caught. The next second, a slender, snow-white hand reached over and pushed the door wide open. The light instantly illuminated in Su Wanrong's startled scream. I turned back in shock to look at Gu Qinghan. Unexpectedly, Gu Qinghan casually curled his lip. "It's clearer this way. Go ahead and..." His series of moves made me almost grind my molar. "Thank you for your thoughtfulness." I decisively pointed the camera at the shameless couple and pressed the record. Su Wanrong, in a flurry, struggled while hysterically yelling, "Jiang Che, give me, or you'll regret it." "Oh, really?" I said, switching my phone. A mocking smile appeared on my lips. "How you'd look if these photos..." Instantly, Su Wanrong's face turned. She anxiously looked at Wang Yang. But Wang Yang was busy pulling, utterly embarrassed. He didn't dare, especially since Gu Qinghan was quietly backing me up. Su Wanrong gritted, threatening viciously, "Jiang Che, if you dare release these photos, I'll make sure." Before she could finish, Gu looked at his phone with an apology. "Oh no, what should I do? I accidentally slipped and sent your explicit photos to..." Wang Yang froze for a moment, his molars almost cracking. But "Could you recall the message?" Gu Qinghan grinned slyly and blatantly sent more photos to the group chat, saying, "My phone seems to be malfunctioning." Wang Yang's face flushed a dark red, his legs turning weak. He collapsed onto the floor. Seeing this, I slowly "From now on, when you see me, stay far away. If I'm in a bad mood, I'll upload these photos online. Let the internet enjoy your disgusting..." Wang Yang's face turned pale. He looked up at me, trembling. I let go of him in disgust, turned to Su Wanrong, and gave her a look of utter... The next moment, I turned around, walking out without looking back. Gu Qinghan's lips curved slightly, obediently following my step. But after walking a short distance, Wang Yang, still sitting on the floor like a muttered, Jangche. Suddenly, he covered his mouth, staring fearfully at the door. I'd advise you not to mess with. Gu Qinghan appeared coldly, a slender, pale arm, his natural elegance, and even I can't beat him. Not only does he step on me, but he also pierces, and now he's even more. Wang Yang's brains unable to comprehend why a lowly man with no status or wealth could compete with a top-tier heiress like Gu Qing. It wasn't until her captivating fox-like and her scarlet lips curved into a mystique that she said, "He's my future husband." Wang Yang, who had just collapsed back onto the floor, his heart pounding wild. On the other side, it was almost 10 o'clock. The streetlights were dim, and the night breeze was cool. I instinctively shrinking my neck from the cold. "Do you want to warm up in my arms?" A woman's distant yet familiar voice sounded. My heart skipped a beat. I didn't turn to look at her. I kept walking along the sidewalk. It was just a few cans of beer. The after effect, my face grew hotter and hot. My head started feeling dim. At that moment, out of nowhere came a large black dog without. It was chasing a fluffy white Samoyed. They both ran right up to me. The little Samoyed, terrified, hid behind. The large black dog stood and barking ferociously. I raised my hand and smacked its head hard. "Why are you barking?" "Shut up!" The large black dog was utterly stunned. Its eyes widened, its mouth hanging open as if petrified. Perhaps it had never encountered someone so bold, exuding an aura of indifference, ready to fight if challenged. Gu Qinghan twitched at the corner of, silently muttering, "Amazing. Now even passing dogs have to endure a slap. Impressive. Get lost, or I'll take your bones apart." With a whimper, the large black turned and dashed away at lightning speed, its legs like wheels on. As if to thank me, the little Samoyed emerged from behind me, lifting a snow-white, delicate paw to tap at my foot. Tilting its fluffy head, it looked at. I took a step forward, and it followed closely behind. Gu Qinghan followed as well, but kept a cautious distance, afraid of getting slapped. At an intersection, I turned to look at the person and dog. I crouched down and patted the Samoyed's head. My voice slightly hazy, I said, "Hello, go find your owner now. Stop following me." The next second, it suddenly became and ran toward a girl in the distance. It was obvious the owner had found. I watched as the little Samoyed followed the girl. My dizziness worse. I started seeing spots. It became harder to stand. Suddenly, a slender finger grabbed my arm. It pulled me into a warm, soft embrace. A voice I wanted to forget, but could never erase rang. "Fool, your drinking is still this bad. Being drunk feels awful." For no reason at all, a wave of intense bitterness surged. I almost couldn't resist holding him tightly. 4 years have passed, but I'm still so useless. With red eyes, I pushed him away, but he held me even tighter. Gu Qinghan looked down at me. His gaze grew grayer. "Can I kiss you?" Before I could react, he forcefully kissed me. It sobered me up almost instantly, but in the end, I still chose to close my eyes. The next moment, my phone suddenly rang. I abruptly opened my eye. Just a second before I leaned in, I decisively let. My heart was pounding wildly. He raised his hand to touch my cheek, but I firmly pressed his hands against the wall. The woman's thin lips. She leaned close. She whispered, I replaced the bed in the bed. "Don't you want to come home? I'll let you go all." My cheeks burning, I took a deep breath. I glanced at him, still thinking about my wife is calling me home. "If you really want to get hit, we as a couple can accommodate you." Gu Qinghan's grip on me loosened. I took the chance to break free from his. I walked to the side to answer. My voice was soft and sweet. "Honey, are you almost here?" Behind me, Gu Qinghan's face darkened, his bewitching fox-like eyes filled with a saintly light. When I turned around after the call, I found him staring directly at the curve of my lips. With a cold, mocking tone, he said, "Why do I?" Turns out I've grown a green hat. I rolled my eyes speechlessly. What was he mocking? Wasn't he the one who betrayed me 4 years? The next sec, Gu Qinghan looked at my empty left ring finger. Why don't I believe it? At the wedding, he stared at my hand 800, confirming I wasn't wearing a ring. I kept a straight face. "I don't care if you believe." Gu Qinghan laughed angrily. Suppressing his anger, he said, "Fine, tell me, where have you been these 4 years? What happened to make you so completely inside and out?" He recognized me at a glance. At that moment, a black car stopped by the driver's window rolled down, revealing she leaned out slightly and warmly called, "Honey, hurry up and get in the car." I froze until the rear window rolled down, revealing Keijen's smiling face. He glanced at Gu Qinghan, and I finally snapped out. In a soft voice, I said, "Honey, thank you for picking me up." After getting in, Keijen buckled my seat and angrily asked, "This is the woman, right?" I smiled bitterly and nodded. Then I looked at the red plastic bag which was full of eggs. The next second, Keijen threw a handful at Gu Qinghan. That exquisite face stunned him for several seconds. Unconsciously, he squeezed, his thumb piercing one of them. Then he remembered what he was doing. Keijen threw the eggs forcefully out the window, shouting, "Go to hell!" However, Gu Qinghan casually sidestepped the attack. "Damn it, Why does this trash woman seem harder to catch? Fuming, Keijen prepared to throw, only to see Guqinghan stepping close. His captivating fox-like eyes were half narrow, enchanting yet dangerous. Keijen instinctively moved closer to. I grabbed the eggs from his hand and threw one out. Guqinghan suddenly stopped in his. The egg hit him square in the chest. Sticky egg yolk spread across his legs. I froze for 2 seconds at the sight, then threw another egg at him. This one shattered on his shoulder. His shirt looked even more disheveled. Keijen stared in shock. He whispered, "Zhangche? You threw eggs at him and he didn't dodge at all. I'm starting to ship you two." I rolled my eyes speechlessly. Slowly, I rolled up the car window. "Let's drive." Guqinghan stared coldly at the receding. His lips curled into a sarcastic. A rideshare driver, calling her honey so smoothly, huh? 10 minutes later, outside the hotel, I got out of the car and headed straight to the convenience. Keijen followed and saw me grab a pack. "That many cans. Can you drink them all?" Hearing, I gave him a look for him to interpret himself. It was the first time Keijen had seen that expression. Sensing something, he didn't. All right, I get it. He grabbed a piece of bread from the shelf and you probably didn't eat much at the banquet. Back in the hotel room, I sat cross-legged on the sofa, eating the bread. Keizen changed clothes as he spoke. I honestly didn't expect the trap. To be honest, such a wild and glamorous young lady. She definitely has the trait the men throwing themselves at could form a line from the North Pole. Keijen pondered for a moment. But why do I feel like he still has feelings for you? I gestured to the beer can. Maybe his life is too smooth and so he's using me to spice. I took a swig of beer. The spicy burn hit my throat. It brought back those bitter. They surged like a Meanwhile, a luxurious black Bentley was parked in the passenger seat. Guqinghan had changed it. He yawned lazily. Turning to his assistant Dan, he said, "He's back. Mr. Jiang and you, do you have a Huang Liu had seen my photo. The photo was cut out from a high school graduate, a boy with black frame glass, ordinary looking, unimpressed. He really couldn't guess why his was so persistent. In the next Guqinghan smirked self-mockingly. It's a love dispute. I've liked him for 10 years. Huang Liu was stunned. Did Mr. Zhang save your life or something? You must really owe him. Hearing this, Guqinghan erupted. Before coming to work tomorrow, go to the hospital because this one just got you fired.